directory name is source, right? And we have the file name of the class util. Let's call that util.php. And we have the class man, which is, the actual class man extends util, right? And now we are able to use the functions like rest, sleep, and so on and so forth that it's included in this util file, right? Remember, we're trying to get the functions of this util file, right? And in order to do that, you see, we had to require util.php, right? But now, using the auto load, we don't have to use the require anymore. We can actually just do use. But before then, let me explain something. So the directory structure might look like this. So we have source, structure, and we have source as the root directory in this case, right? And then in this source we have util.php, and we have man.php, and man.php is the current file. This is the file. The man.php actually starts from here, right? The man.php, and now we're trying to extend util.php. In order to do that, as you can see, we had to require source util.php here to be able to use the util functions in the util class, right? I think that is clear enough. Now, using PSR4 or using autoloading, so there's also PSR0, but we're going to be using PSR4 for the purpose of this tutorial. Using the autoloading concept, we don't have to always require each file that we want to extend or each class that we want to extend, like using require. We can actually just say use. So instead of doing require, I'm going to comment this out. Instead of doing require, see, this is a lot cleaner. You can actually do use what? Source util, right? And then use it, right? So basically, all the files, right, in our project is going to be mapped together, in a sense, kind of loaded and mapped together. So all you just need to do is to reference the namespace, right? Or namespace and possibly sub namespaces, and then use the file, the class name, and it will just pick it up without having to do all this required. Because if you are doing this, you have to do it for everything, any class you want to extend. You might have like 10, 15, 20 classes, and you have to like require and then look for where things are before being able to require. That is not sustainable, right? So that's the purpose of PSR autoloading, literally. And yeah, that covers that. And so for here, we are doing PSR4 and practice blog posts. So this is the namespace, and this is the sub namespace, and then this is the directory part. So we're going to be creating that. So let me just create that now. We're going to call this new directory and source, right? And yeah, that covers it. That's all about PSR4, literally. Then there's also autoload dev. It's the same thing. The difference is that we don't want to be using, we don't want to kind of map our production classes with our dev dependencies. So for this, we're just going to be including test classes. So we have like a test folder where we'll be writing tests, automated tests for our classes, and so we're going to be doing that here. So same thing, PSR4, node will be what? PSR4, right? And this will be same thing, same approach, practice. And these are just namespaces. You'll see how we're going to use this. And the namespaces are separated by 2 / blog posts and test, right? And for this, the file that it will be pointing to. So this is actually a file. See, I created it here, or a directory. Sorry. So the directory that it will be pointing to here would be tests, and that's it for auto load dev as well. So I'm going to create that. So we have our, so look at how we are gradually forming our directory structure. So for this we have tests, right? And let's call this tests. Makes more sense. Refactor, rename S. Yep. And what next on our, okay, so for the require, I think the only thing that I would manually fill out here would be the PHP version that we're going to be using. So anything equal to or greater than PHP 7.0, as I described in our, as I talked about in our last chapter, in the last chapter of this episode, right? So 7.0 and require dev, which is another important thing. So same thing, auto load dev, require dev. You can see that there is the dev similarity, and this is also this is just dev dependencies for the purpose of developing the software. It's not actually going to run in production. It's not going to be running in production. So yeah, what and required dev is mostly for tests, just testing things, writing automated tests mostly. That is what you use that for. So for this, I will leave this for now. Come back to this just in a bit. I'm just going to require that's our dependency. What we'll be using for tests is PHP. You can actually just use PHP unit, which is like the native PHP tester, but let's just use test PHP. I think it's like more advanced in a sense. It gives you more functions and more powers. And the last thing here to call it a day would be scripts. And for scripts, the only scripts that I would add here. So if you remember in the past, we've done something like composer, um, composer something. So we had composer init at some point, composer whatever. So we want to be able to add a script where we'll be able to now do, when we are trying to run tests and test our stuff, we want to do something like composer tests, and then it would run the unit tests, right? Like it's going to like run the unit test for any tests we are trying to perform. When we start coding, things will be faster. I know these things are slow, but it's just good to give you a good foundation for these things, and then the coding would be a lot faster. And for tests, would do vendor. So we are trying to reference the vendor directory is not created yet, but we're trying to reference the vendor directory that will be created when we run composer install, right? So after this, we're going to run composer install, and it will install everything and then create a vendor directory. Just here, you see it just now. And the vendor directory, when we now require the pest PHP, it would create what's this file. So require vendor bin pest. So there'll be like a pest directory, and yeah, that is where we'll be running our tests from. So we don't want to always do, so we can always type this, like actually come and do this directory into the terminal. We can do this here, vendor bin pest, and click enter, and it will run the test. But yeah, that is not, so it's better to include it here and then do composer test, right? And that would work. And yeah, I think that is it for now. So we're going to be doing composer install. I think we have everything. With a namespace separator, non-empty PSR4 prefix must end with a namespace separator. Okay, so I'm supposed to add this here as well to end it. That is what the error is saying. Yeah, missed that. Yep. So composer generated, see the vendor file I was talking about. You won't be able to see the bin right now, but you can see autoload class map. The autoload we've been discussing all this while, it's here now. Autoload this, that, yeah. See autoload class map. This is what you have. Namespaces. See PSR4. You can see practice block post, right, which is actually here. See, it's just being mapped literally. And I think the other thing that I forgot to mention is this optimize autoloader, right? The optimize autoloader we can actually do true for optimize autoloader, right? But and that would make it faster, the performance that would make it faster, but it's better to do that on production, because if you do that here and you add a class, you would have to always dump autoload and um kind of like remap it. So if you do composer, if you do this with true, you have to always dump autoload and it will be remapped here. But if you just do it to false, you won't have to like dump the autoload. Literally, you would be able to like add classes and just keep writing your code without having to. It's going to create issues if you do it to true. So it's faster, but that's for production. That's not for development. And I think that is concluding the composer.json file. Next would be readme file, which I would try to handle just now as well. And yeah, I am going to stop this tutorial now and start a new one for readme file.